All right, so Markwa will take us through this next segment, which focuses on security in the country. Markwa?
Thank you, Chamberlain. We're being joined now by Rekwen Ebasi, who's a security expert and advisor. He's also the president, African Council on Narcotics. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, what would you say has changed? Only yesterday we were having a conversation with a retired AIG and also a security consultant, and beg your pardon, a member of the House of Representatives. And you know, one of the things that stuck out was that there is no national policy on security. Is this extremely important for us to be able to face the challenges that we're currently facing as a country?
I think there's a national policy on security. The question is how effectively is this being executed?
What is the policy?
The policy is, you know, a whole list of activities, responsibilities, duties assigned to different institutions which should do what to ensure Nigeria, you know, is safe and secure. And in fact, if you look at Section 14 of the 1999 Constitution, it provides clearly that the security and welfare of citizens is the primary responsibility of government. And all of that, you know, lays the foundation for a national security policy for this country. So I don't understand why anybody would think that
this came, interestingly, this came from a former Assistant Inspector General of Police who says there is no national policy. And by that, I'm sure he meant more than what was in the Constitution in terms of what is our direction, what are the current challenges that we're facing. So we know that, for instance, the police is supposed to take care of internal security. You have a number of other government agencies, such as the DSS, who are not usually in the open, doing the intelligence work and what have you. The army is supposed to look after, or the military, beg your pardon, is supposed to look after the territorial integrity. But increasingly, for instance, we have seen that the military is involved heavily in internal security matters. Shouldn't we have developed another strategy, for instance, that recognizes the new challenges that we're facing and how we intend to face them headlong?
Mope, I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, the only thing that is constant in life is change. So, you know, as new challenges emerge, the need to evolve new strategies to deal with those challenges cannot be too emphasized. But again, the army is not just involved because they have nothing else to do. Section 17, for example, you know, allows for the army, you know, to be involved in internal security. There's what's called military assistance to civil authority. It's provided for, and you know, the military act. But again,
assistance is different from when it has almost become statutory. I mean, when you look at the fact that the military is in more than 27 states operating in this country at any given time, it definitely calls for concern.
Of course, because the challenges themselves are enormous. So it calls for concern. But have you looked at what's going on in this country? We've got porous borders. There's a lot of rural-urban migration. There's so much proliferation of arms, small and light weapons. You have a large problem, you know, with unemployment. Almost on an annual basis, almost 2 million young people are seeking admission into universities. The same number come out and they are not gainfully employed. Less than 10% of these, in fact, get employment if they get any at all. You know, and then you look at the street kids phenomenon, the almajiris, all of these problems, and you do not have a youth Marshall Plan. What do you expect? Most of them would be ready-made army in the criminal underworld.
A youth Marshall Plan, would that have been a part of a security plan?
Why not? That's, I mean, it would be a valid point to say that, because the majority of the population of this country is, you know, in the youth bracket, you know, and if you have no plan for them, what do you expect them to do? You know, and a lot of them are going into, you know, higher institutions and are, you know, spending 4 to 5 years reading all the courses. They come out 1, 2, 3, 4 years and have nothing to do. What else? And yet they must survive in this environment. So a youth Marshall Plan would be integral to national security strategy, if you ask me.
But how would you say that be captured? Because some people would say that, isn't that why we had the NYC, for instance?
Yeah, but NYC
which was to capture graduates.
NYC is a short term for the most part, just about
1 year.
1 year. And after that, what next happens to the young people?
What would it entail then?
Well, it will entail, a concept that clearly defines what we do for these young men and women who are coming out of school, and establishing the environment that enables them to either get employment in government or be able to fend for themselves, because you've created a conducive and enabling environment that enables them to look after them, to fend for themselves. But if you have a problem like, let's take basic, let's take electricity as an example. A young man comes out of school and hopes that he may set up a barbing salon for himself, and but there is no electricity, so he ends up with procurement of procuring a generator for this purpose, and uses it over a period of time. He gets frustrated. Lets that he keeps that away. And more rural urban migration means that people from the rural environment are coming over to the cities, hoping that they will eke out some living for themselves, and so they end up in slums or high-density environments where, over a period of time, they have nothing else to do. Then they, interface, intermingle, and join up with, members of the criminal underworld in those environments, and they themselves take to positive criminality in the course of time. All these are things that should give us sufficient concern for us to try to put together a Marshall Plan for the youths.
You have listed a number of things. Some people will say which are perfect ingredients for, according to the words of the outgoing governor of the Northern Governors Forum. It says we have the ingredients for a perfect storm. And it would seem that is what we currently have when we talk about our security situation. Interestingly, though, I'm looking at the front of the dailies this morning, and there isn't any story bordering on, at least directly, talking about people dying or anything of the sort, which is a relief, so to speak. It's not to say that people did not die, but at least nothing major happened, say, between yesterday and today for the dailies to capture. Would we say then that indeed perhaps there is some work going on behind the scenes that should maybe let us have cause for hope, especially as the Buhari administration is about to be sworn in for another 4 years?
Of course. Without hope, we'd all be dead. It should be, but the press may not have truly captured the developments across the country, because I can tell you there is hardly any day that passes without a case of kidnap. There's hardly any day that passes without a case of robbery. There's hardly any day that passes without one infraction, one criminal activity or the other. The press may not be in a position to carry all of that.
Yes, indeed. But there are days when you look at all the dailies and all you see is bad. In fact, sometimes it's so bad that you just see Black Weekend or Black Monday, so to speak, and they list all the things that came to the media's attention between the course of 24 hours.
Any responsible government should be worried about what has been going on in this country. So government ought to muster the political will to try to deal with the problem. And I think to that extent, of course, the security agencies are working. There's a lot more needs to be done, because I don't honestly think we're doing enough. Last time we discussed on this here, we talked about government being reactive for the most part.
Yeah.
Operation Power Father and the rest of them are all reactive measures. Why don't we, rebrand our intelligence assets, the intelligence community, make them more active, and the intelligence they collect and pass on, to the action agencies are put to effective use. But again, if we have had Black Saturdays and all the security challenges, and government is sensitive, then government ought to be doing something. I think the various agencies themselves are, doing quite a lot, including looking at internal, their internal affairs, because, of course, the need for transparency, accountability, and in fact, rebranding of their strategies. Coming up with new strategies cannot be too emphasized.
Okay. Well, you are a member of the security community, and I'm sure that there are things that you will know, as someone who has advised members of the security community. Are you optimistic that indeed, some of the things that you know ought to be put in place, perhaps there's also thinking in that direction? Or is it just a lack of communication to the people?
Well, I think so much has been done. A lot more needs to be done. Of course, there's need for synergy between, government and the people, in terms of communication, so there be a clear understanding of the responsibility of government. Remember what I said earlier about Section 14 of the 1999 Constitution, providing, that it's the responsibility of government, to secure and provide welfare for citizens. And if you go to Section 24 of the same Constitution, it makes this reciprocal. So it's also a responsibility of citizens, to support government in, crime prevention, law enforcement activities and all that. So they need to sustain this communication, cannot be, again, too accentuated. But, having said that, I think that one point that must be emphasized is that government must summon the political will to be up and doing in order to be able to effectively tackle criminality in this country.
We have been told that this current structure is not sustainable. Having one central command of the police is not sustainable. State governors have talked about, state police. Effectively, some people say that the state governors are just figureheads when it comes to security. They're not chief security officers. What is your thinking in this direction? Do you think the police force should be decentralized, or do you think that state governors or state governments should have their own policing system?
I don't understand what the fear is about the creation of, state police. I think for the most part, those who are apprehensive about its creation are so apprehensive because they, figure or believe that, when you create the state police, they become instruments in the hands of government, to manipulate the political system. But that's, quite far from it.
Is not sufficient fear?
No, that's not good enough. If you have the laws and we abide and comply with the laws, we should be able to, straighten things out. But we have a problem. We know what the solutions are, and we're only too afraid to try to implement this. And that's not good enough. I mean, in most states, they have, they have in place all kinds of institutions, that are funded by the state, that, deal with, crime and criminal activities. In Cross River State, we had the Quick Intervention Squad. Lagos State, they have the, Rapid Response, team. You have the same in Port Harcourt, almost everywhere. And the bulk of, this, the funding for these institutions come from state governments. So if state government can go this far, I know the other argument is that if state governments can't pay salaries, how can they possibly, cope with funding state police? But that again is, it's a far cry. Let's get, the appropriate legislation and statutes in place, and start something. But for me, that's about one of the best approaches to tackling criminality at the grassroots level. It's important, and of course, in most countries, they're also setting up a lot of neighborhood security watches like vigilantes. I mean, Nigeria is about the only country in the whole world, a democracy of this size that has, centralized police system. So we need to, devolve. We need to decentralize, and so that, there will be more community participation and for effectiveness.
Let me take you up. You're President, African Council on Narcotics. There's been a huge conversation in recent times over whether or not cannabis should be legalized. Some states are thinking of making revenue from the new market. Some countries have legalized cannabis, and they're hoping to, maybe do some importation from some countries who might be willing to sell. Do you think it's something we should consider?
Look, if legalizing cannabis would be to, to generate income, my answer to that question would be no. Because, see, this country is so rich. There are 36 states, including the FCT. There is not one single of the 36 states that does not have 1, 2, 3, and sometimes up to 15, mineral resources, solid mineral. How much of this have we, exploited and are putting to use? I mean, if we understand the consequences of cannabis, in terms of its biopsychosocial effects on users, without disregard for the fact that it may be ingredients, for production of other substances or material. I, for example, personally have lost a relation to drug, and I do know that cannabis is it's a substance that affects the central nervous system and therefore subject to addiction and abuse and addiction. And also, it's a gateway drug. Most people who use cannabis do not stop at using cannabis. Of course, they use alcohol, they use cigarette, and then after a period of time, just so they can have a higher level of high, they will probably take to the use of other drugs. What drug does to the system is that in the mind, in the brain, in the human brain, you have two major neurotransmitters. You have dopamine, which is the pleasure center where the drug acts on immediately. And as soon as you use drug, it affects dopamine.
You're looking at it from the perspective of, oh, people are going to get a hold of it and they're going to smoke it. You're not looking at the fact that it is going to be used for other things. The fact that sometimes when this is grown for export, it would automatically take it out of circulation, because those who will grow it will be looking to sell it on the market, where it will fetch far more money than to people who want to just smoke it and get a high.
Once you legalize it for the purposes of export, you would have opened the floodgate. Now there is control, and people are involved with some bit of precaution and carefulness. So abuse is not open. Once you legalize it, abuse is going to be open. We're going to have a lot of, problems associated therewith. Biological problems.
Well, those are your thoughts.
Psychological
But
problems.
as we close, as we wrap up,
yes,
what are your thoughts going forward? Aside this youth Marshall Plan, which you say we should have, what else do you think we should be doing to try and ensure that we get back? The state shows that it is truly in control of the reins of state when it comes to matters of security.
I think that those in positions of authority must summon the political will to want to do and try to do the right thing, beginning with the president himself, and then our policing and crime prevention strategies must be improved upon. The law enforcement agencies, the security agencies generally must look at their internal affairs to be sure they are doing the right thing. And at this point, we need some fresh blood, new blood to be introduced into the management of the Nigerian security architecture. I understand that a number of them, service chiefs are overdue for retirement. I think they have, done their best. At this point, it's just well that they move on to other things while we bring, fresh blood to try to manage. And then we must improve our security intelligence assets and processing.
Well, it's a fine place to leave it. We have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily. Rokwe Nebasi is a security expert and an advisor. He's also the president, African Council on Narcotics. It's back to you, Chamberlain, in Lagos.
Oh, yes, thank you, Mark. Speaking about narcotics, I think we'll just take it a little step further now, because we've got two gentlemen here with us who know very much about that. We've got Mr. Sam Ohuabuwan, who is the president, Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. And we also have Mr. Samuel Adekola, the national chairman, Association of Community Pharmacists of Nigeria. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, it is about this pharmacy council bill. But I know that I think your group, there are several releases being highlighted in the dailies about why you want the president to assent to this bill. But if, just as it will readily come up for a lot of people, they just wonder, in light of several other laws, the Poison and Pharmacy Act, the Drug Distribution, why do we need this Pharmacy Council bill to be signed into law?
Thank you very much. Let me appreciate this opportunity to be here once again to hyper call on Mr. President to sign the bill. Yes, indeed, as you did make reference to the activity of my association about 2 weeks ago. We shut down our premises for 2 hours, between the hours of 12. Yes, I want to let you know. Why it's very significant. Because today, as we speak in Nigeria, there is no single law that has the capacity to address the menace that we find in our health sector. Yet there are pockets of laws, the pharmacy cap, which this specifically with pharmacy, but the Pharmacy Council Bill is the only singular law today that will take care of everybody, including the patent medicine vendors, including the people who are selling products in the market through the coordinated wholesale centers, including even NAFDAC, everybody along, police, NDLA, everybody together. So it's a law that is very, very central to prevention of drug abuse, to prevention of fake drugs in Nigeria. And I must say that I'm happy because the people today who have also been very supportive in getting this bill, who rose to occasion of our cry, are people who have also seen this.
All right, Mr. Obama, is this a magic bullet?
Not necessarily a magic bullet. The world is dynamic. The pharmaceutical space is dynamic. The medical field is dynamic. And as you know, there were diseases that exist so many years ago. There are practice methods that didn't exist. We have found that the pharmaceutical space has expanded sufficiently, but there's not enough regulation to catch all. And it is this lacuna that this law is trying to cure, so that there'll be a comprehensive law that affects access, availability, who is qualified to handle medicines, what's the procedure for handling medicines, how do you restrict unauthorized access of even the common medicines. For a long time, for example, codeine was an OTC product, but due to its misuse, it is now being classified as a controlled medicine. So you won't say because we had a law that made codeine OTC 10 years ago, we shouldn't have a new law. This pharmacy law is comprehensive. You see, what exists now is the pharmacist law, pharmacists. Now, some people interpret it that it's already regulating pharmacies, that it's not regulating the total pharmaceutical chain, because it's a chain from production to distribution to retailing, counseling, hospital use, and we have already found that because of the largeness of our country, we have other people in the chain, subsets of pharmacy, like as my colleague said, the PPMVL, the patent medicine, that are designed to cover where there is gap, where you don't have pharmacies existing. So you have to make sure people have provision of medicines. But this, because the law that exists says Pharmacists Council law, some of them think that the law does not cover them because they are not pharmacists, but they operate within the pharmaceutical chain. So this is the wisdom that led to. Today we speak about drug abuse, and it's a major issue for government. And drug abuse starts with access. Who has access? The pharmacist is the custodian of medicines, but because he does not have the ability to reach every citizen of the country. There are maximum 20,000 pharmacists in the country practicing, and then you have 201 million Nigerians. There's no way, so pharmacy will need some other people, subsets, to help them reach certain nooks and crannies. But this law must cover them. How do they get their drugs? What do they sell? And more important, let me just finish, please. The current Pharmacists Council of Nigeria does not have the competence, not enough resources to be able to enforce this law. So this new law helps them to enforce it.
We'll pick up from there when we come back after the break. Stay with us.